Hi, how's it going?
Good, thanks. How about you?
Yeah, I'm doing well. I'm slowly getting my voice back, but excited to be here with you, Aaron. I
Yeah, I know.
appreciate
Last week you didn't have one. I heard.
it. Nice.
Well, I've got questions. You have answers, and I might have answers too. So we can get into it. We're going to talk about you're a recruiter, right? And we don't always get to hear the other side of the equation of what happens on the recruiter side. And I think there's people out there that would like some of that demystified. And I know you've got good things to say about it. So let's jump into it. First off, I want to
Good.
know how you got into recruiting. You told me a little bit, but you seem to have taken a non-traditional path. So I'm interested.
Yeah, no, of course. I mean, it's funny. I grew up on the agency side myself, right? I've primarily led media practices within creative agencies. And so it's always been something that I've been really passionate about, really enjoyed. And over the years, I think, as most of us on the agency side, by default, by choice, we become builders. We become builders of our own team, of putting them together, dismantling them sometimes, losing people, gaining people, shifting people around. So I think over the years, I have become more and more interested in the people aspect of our business and trying to understand how do we make it more human? How do we make it more about the right type of matching versus kind of like matching job descriptions to resumes and then assuming it's a good fit. How do we demystify, to your own point, like the stigma associated with certain roles, certain titles, and just kind of look at people and look at opportunities from a both human level, but also from a business level that allows both sides to thrive and for it to be a good match. So that's what sort of inspired me to, start the firm. And I've loved it. I mean, I'm blessed and I'm very humbled by it, but it also really gives you a very unique vantage point of seeing how organizations and teams manage things differently, COVID being one of them. No two clients of ours managed it the same way, and I think that's fascinating. So that's a little bit about us. I think to your point about it being different, it is true. It's more non-traditional because I don't believe in maintaining a database. I don't necessarily think that recruiting can be fixed by technology. I think technology can play a massive role, and it has, and it will continue to do so. But at the heart of it, I've always believed that recruiting is an art and not a science.
Yeah.
And so a lot of what Peony does and brings to the table in working with our client is really that hands-on, high-touch human approach versus relying on technology and database to help us make those matches. I hope that that was helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and you also talk about modernizing, you're touching on it, but modernizing the recruitment process or the field of recruitment. So more specifically, what is it about that process that is in desperate need of modernization?
So that's such a great question because I feel so often people assume that modernizing means more technology, when in reality, modernizing is to orchestrating all efforts, whether it's technologically driven or strategically driven, into the direction where the world is heading. That's what modernizing means to me and to us. What that means is, again, previously people like myself, having 20-year, 30-year careers on the agency side, we were considered agency people. And then you had brand folks, client folks, technology folks. And so these swim lanes were very defined and very kind of like set in place. Now, when you look at talent, when you truly look at modern generation of talent, they move more seamlessly between what we used to call swim lane. So one year they're in an agency, next year they're in-house. They might do a consultancy, they might work with a technology platform. So that to me represents a modern day kind of assessment that's required. You know, how are we looking at these competencies and the skill sets that can translate more seamlessly between these areas and be able to contribute to the world? So that's a little bit of that, what modernizing means to us.
So, but with that in mind, what role should technology play? Because, with the rise of AI, it can be a gatekeeper, or it can make assessments that maybe humans can't. So where does technology fit into that?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think ATS in general, obviously it can help facilitate scale, no questions, right? Like something that a machine does, I can't do. I think where it falls short is this entire existence based on exclusion. I mean, we immediately have sets of parameters that an ATS would want candidates to be kind of like scored on, you know. Are you a man? Are you a woman? Are you married? Are you not married? Do you live in Los Angeles? Do you live in New York? Like it immediately puts you in a box. I believe that that's kind of like the humanizing part that is missing from relying solely on ATS, which, you know, a really great talent recruiter, talent acquisition specialist should go really deep into not only qualifying folks, but also educating the hiring team on what are the things that are so important to you and what are the things that, you know, you have flexibility with, so it doesn't have to fit into that box. That's one part of it. I think the other part that it has helped, obviously, connections. I mean, look at LinkedIn, what it has done for not just our, you know, industry, but for the world. So you have the ability to have all these connections on a platform that you otherwise would not have had. You know, you get to stay in touch with your colleagues and clients from years ago. And that's amazing. Now we have AI. Now you're looking at how AI can kind of play a role in this. And I think it will do amazing things if we tap into it the right way. And that's the part that's exciting to me, is figuring out, you know, exactly how we leverage it in a way that doesn't take away the humanity, but it actually adds on to it.
Do you think we should be as scared of AI as I'm not scared of it, but but there's statistics that predict 50 to 80% of all jobs will be displaced by AI. Do you think that that's a reality that we're heading into?
Yeah, I think a little bit, right? Like human nature, we're always threatened by something that we don't know, that we feel is more powerful than us. I don't think it's a matter of being scared. I think it's a matter of being kind of like brave to hold hands and see what it can do for us. But I think it makes people uncomfortable because it's a threat. I think if we see it as an opportunity, then obviously we are expected to change along with it. And that's when I think the winners will kind of arise, because they're more adaptable and more interested and intrigued by it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, and it's a little early to realize the full effects or implications of AI. But let's talk about the job market that we're in now. So what are some of the factors that led to it, and what's going on?
I mean, that's a really interesting question. That's probably a little multi-layered. I think it's been a really tough market, particularly for the advertising folks, and some of it driven by, of course, you know, when you have big tech layoffs, small tech layoffs, it trickles down to ad spending being down, it trickles down to agencies. Some of it is category driven. Some of it, I think, the last 2.5 years, a lot of organizations overhired, you know. Digital spending was up, digital goods and services were up. And so part of it is maybe settling down and just kind of arriving at a more realistic and stable business level. Some of it is truly being hurt by, you know, the economic conditions of this particular sector. And some of it is, unfortunately, the model that agencies and client services orientation has brought upon itself, where you win a big piece of business, you hire a bunch of people, you lose that business, you let go of a bunch of people, which is disheartening, and it's tragic at times, right? But I think this job market, at least the last 9 to 12 months, for me, it's a clear reflection of all those things combined. You have agencies that may be overhired, you have companies that maybe had more hopeful projections than they did. And so all of that is now coming down to having supply and demand that are not equal. For every one open position, you have hundreds and thousands of applicants. So it starts to get really frustrating for people.
Yeah. Well, yeah, especially on the agency side, it is part of the model, is the staffing up and the trimming down. And that happens as a cycle. And when you win and lose business, as you said, but that's one agency, and now we're seeing it across, across agencies, across verticals. Is this similar to, is this just another cycle, or is there something uncharted territory that's going on now?
I don't know. I wish I had a crystal ball to know that myself. I think people in the industry know is that it's a cyclical business. It always has been. It has its ups and downs. Sometimes it affects the entire industry. Other times it might affect, I don't know, a holding company, two holding companies, some of the independents. But I think this is probably one of those moments where everyone's feeling it a little bit, to varying degrees. And I don't doubt that we'll come out of it. I don't doubt that, in a few months things will turn, and maybe projections will be different, maybe investments will be different. I'm sure AI will play a significant role in this. It's kind of like a mini industrial revolution a little bit. Because generally, when you look at reductions, at least smarter organizations, they take it as an opportunity to assess competencies. Hey, okay, what do we have now? What are we left with? What do we need to build towards? And that doesn't necessarily go back to the existence and the model that they had prior to that reduction. So in a way, it becomes a way to kind of like reimagine things a little bit too.
Right. Yeah. And hopefully, ideally, companies are using this time to do a strategic reset, or if needed, or think about what comes next. And there's some survival mode happening. But there is hiring. There has to be hiring this year, right?
Absolutely.
So what would you say is the mindset of an employer right now in terms of what's being sought after, like in terms of roles and functions?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, obviously, it varies by organization, because I think an organization values and business ambitions directly drive how they look at hiring and the talent. I think technology will be a big part of it. I think similar to how 15 years ago everybody had a social guru, people will start having some sort of a lead, or maybe an incubator, or something that allows them to test and learn what AI can do for their offering. So that for me is, if you're smart, I'm not going to say an agency, because not everybody is an agency, but if you're smart about how you're looking at your services and offerings, you would think of that. I think the other part is this, I don't know what the right word would be for it, whether it's naivete or just this notion that, oh, there's so many applicants out there, so why, like, we shouldn't have a hard time, finding a VP of X or a director of Y, like whatever that might be. I can't tell you how dangerous that is, like this assumption that people are dying to work for you. That's not the case necessarily, because, everybody has also their priorities and their values and what might be right for them. And yes, it does help that you have a surplus of, supply, but I think being smart about how you go about your selection process has a massive impact on the next couple of years. And organizations that do their due diligence of understanding, why is this candidate out here? What motivates them? Why would they be interested in this role? And really start to rebuild in a more meaningful way will continue to win.
Mhm. Right. Well, when a posting goes up, number one, it's what the company thinks they need, not necessarily what they do need, right? In terms of capability and things like that. And sometimes what a company posts, and I'm sure you help intervene with these things, is no one exists. There's zero applicants for that specific position.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering and I think that's probably why you work differently than just those cattle call type of put up a posting, see who comes to it, go weed through the pools of applicants. But you work different in a different method. Can you explain how your approach?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think there's a couple of things with public posting, and look, they do work sometimes, and a lot of people, myself included, have had success with it. So no kind of putting that down.
Mhm.
I think what becomes the problem is when you look at job descriptions, and this part is actually fascinating for myself, is very rarely do you actually have a job description that someone sat down to audit, to go through it, and to ensure that it reflects what they're looking for today. If you look at, let's use agency roles as an example, if they're looking for brand strategy director, or I don't know, a VP account director, I guarantee you that that job description has been used for the past 5 years, if not longer.
Uh-huh.
And so that's step one of just choosing the easy path and making sure that, oh, we make a couple of tweaks here and, it's good to go. Versus really understanding that, hey, this is an opportunity for us to, kind of reimagine things, as we said. The other part of it is not every hiring manager has access to the applicants. And so they are kind of depends on the organization. Sometimes you have a middleman, sometimes you have a middle team, sometimes you rely on someone else to do the audit, or like to kind of weed through the candidates and send you the right ones. And there's no right or wrong, but I think what we bring and what we have always done is really work closely with that hiring manager. So if you're looking for that account director, we want to understand who you are, how do you work? How do you set your people up for success? What are the things that motivates you and your team? What are the challenges that you're trying to solve? And so when we present someone, we present it directly to you. We don't send it into a box that you may or may not have access to.
Right. Right. So you're doing more sourcing or curating.
Correct.
And are there some overall traits and attributes you look for in those candidates that make it through, or that become the recommended
Yeah.
candidates?
There's no one size fits all, because that becomes ATS. But I think there's definitely values that are important to us, to Peony, to my firm, when we speak with someone. That doesn't have to be necessarily the values that the hiring manager is looking for. But if I'm speaking with someone and I sense that, or I question their integrity, if I question their honesty, like, I have a hard time putting that in front of the client. So I'd say, like, yes, there are definitely a set of values that is important to me and my team when we assess candidates. Somebody who's professional, somebody who has good manners, that, like I said, has integrity. Like, those are so important, because I don't care how incredible you are at your job, and I don't care how amazing of a match you can be to that particular hiring manager. If you're rude, I don't think you deserve that connection. And oftentimes I actually do let my clients know, and I say, hey, yeah, this person fits the bill, but here's my 2 cents. I'll let you decide. And so Yeah, I think those are probably a couple of examples that I can share off the top of my head.
Personality is definitely a factor. I mean, we talk a lot about culture, but I think it goes beyond culture. It's personal, um, personal values and how they stand up, right?
So true, so true. Beyond personality, I think it's values. I think it's, I don't have to like your personality, but if you're a good person, if you're polite, if you're grateful, if you have transparency to the extent that it's necessary for this conversation, that goes a long way, a long way. I can't tell you how important that email communication personality is. Someone that, is able to create connections with you in an email. I'm bombarded by people, and people get so creative and so interesting when they reach out or when they, are in communication with us, and we appreciate it.
Yeah, well, with email communication or the standing out part, what are maybe some less traditional ways of getting the attention of someone in your capacity that are welcome or appreciated?
Um, I don't know. I don't know what the if there's a uh,
The formula?
specific way, a formality. Yeah, I don't know that, but I mean, I've had people sending me poetry. I've had people kind of like finding connections that maybe we've had that I wasn't aware of. And so I think the more you're able to show um, that this means more to you than a job application, the more I'm inclined to make that time to speak with them. Very often we just get, hey, here's my resume. I would love to be considered for blah, blah, blah. I can't tell you how many hundreds of them, come this way on a weekly basis. But very rarely you actually get a guy or a girl or, a candidate out there that goes an extra mile to say something that means something to you, in hope of creating that connection. And I think that for me means a lot.
And what doesn't work? What's like too far or just doesn't feel right?
Uh, I think that this is so funny, actually. This has happened a few times over the last couple of months. Um, People presenting or like reaching out to us like on Friday night. Um, Friday night, resumes come in, portfolios come in. And then Saturday night, did you get it? Did you get it? And so um, if you're smart, if I think that you're here to solve big business problems for the clients that hopefully you will be working on, I don't think sharing your candidacy over a blank email on Friday night is that great of an idea. And I also don't think kind of this constant thing of did you get it? Did you get it? Is again another reflection of someone who's strategic and thoughtful and able to take on challenges in a new way. So in a way, a little bit of that medium becomes the message here, right? How you present yourself and how you tell your own story is very much for me a reflection of how you would manage a client's business, if that makes any sense.
It does. Yeah, very similar to on the brand side, that first, we call it the first touch or the first uh, experience should be an indicator of what the full experience is like.
Exactly.
Well, with that in mind, I don't love the term personal branding, but unless you're a public figure, but
Yeah.
how important do you think it is for a professional or a candidate to cultivate that personal, we'll call it a personal brand, or even before the email goes out or anything, where you can get a sense of who that individual is?
Um, I think it's hugely important. I think it is your differentiator. And I think it allows you, the candidate, to start with the human aspect. It starts with you. And I think so many people miss that opportunity because they're so focused on impressing us or the hiring team, but their accomplishments. Oh, I've won this award. Oh, I've done this, I've done that. But what about you? You know, and so I love when people show a sneak peek, if not full. It's not an expectation for you to tell us your deepest secrets here, right? Like this is just so that we get to see you under a different light. And I think to your point about that personal brand, or that the existence that you have publicly as it applies to your profession and your career, is hugely important. I love people that like let us know what are some of the things that they do outside of work. You know, I'm a writer, I'm a photographer, I love going to sporting events. And it's a way for us to see how their brain works. It's a way for us to see how they connect back with their community, their colleagues, their clients, and versus someone that might have a ton of great information, but I have no idea what this person is like. So yeah, I think it is really important. And not just a personality side, to your point, the personal brand is also a reflection of your experience. You know, who are the brands and the clients that you've worked with? What are the things that you've done in your career that you're proud of, that when you think back, you're like, that was awesome. I really love that I got to be a part of that, or that I got to contribute to that. And so I think all of that is part of that story that hopefully is not linear, because so many candidates feel like they have to show us this linear path to success. Oh, I started out as an assistant, I'm a VP now. Great. What else? And so, yeah, I think it is really important to be able to kind of like build that multifaceted look if you were a brand.
Got it. Yeah, and be people too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's a huge part of it.
So on top of that, what else can, if someone is displaced or looking for a career change or a stepping stone, what else can candidates or individuals be doing right now to line themselves up for opportunities, especially ones like yours that aren't publicly posted?
Yeah, that's hard. I really empathize with everyone going through that uh, experience right now, because it is frustrating and it is scary. Finances are a big part of our mental state, and just, you know, feeling secure and comfortable. And if you have a family you're managing, everybody has obviously different scenarios that they're dealing with. And it is a blow when you know, you're part of a reduction, or you end up losing your job, or you walk away for whatever reason, and be stuck in a market that feels like doesn't see you. I think that's what candidates are feeling right now is, you know, I'm applying to all these jobs and I don't hear back, or I talk to one person on the team, then it falls apart. And so I think that I don't know if I can say advice, but I can have some suggestions. I think one part is realizing that it really is in you right now. I think it, you know, giving yourself that space that you deserve, that, you know, it's not that I'm not a good candidate. It's not that I'm not presenting myself. It may be true, but I think cutting yourself some slack right now is a good idea, and like not being so hard on yourself, or not, you know, getting something quickly. The other thing is it's humans. We do what we're comfortable with as our first step. Our comfort is, oh, let me put together a quick resume and let's apply to 300 jobs in 1 week. And hopefully that, you know, something great comes along, and you fall into that kind of routine that feels comfortable and familiar and somewhat also easy for you to do. And when it doesn't come to fruition, when nothing comes out of it, you get frustrated, you feel down, you're upset at yourself, you start questioning everything else. And then you throw in the towel for a couple of weeks, and then you come back and do the exact same thing again. So I think the advice that I would have, or the suggestion that I would have, is really take a step back and pretend that this is your only opportunity to be selective about what that next ideal role looks like for you. That allows you to not blindly apply and then get disappointed and upset at yourself. Really find out, you know what, this week I'm going to look at 4 jobs that I feel are really important for the following reasons. This is my criteria. This is what I'm looking for. And read and understand more about those organizations, those teams, maybe find out who the hiring lead is, maybe reach out to them directly in a creative way, maybe find connections, you know, your colleagues and your network that might have a thing or two to say about that, and change the way you're looking at the way you want to put yourself out there, the way you want to connect with that ideal role. I think that's one suggestion, obviously. The other, I think, is also, maybe for myself at least, you know, I took it like, I took it as an opportunity to also like, hey, you know, are there things that I want to do? You know, if I were put in those scenarios of, do I want to self-reinvent? Are there adjacent roles that I would be good at? Because that's the other trap people fall into, is applying to anything and everything, you know. Oh, I've been in strategy, so I can do it from here to there. And that's not true, because again, you kind of like dig that hole for yourself of disappointment. But if you realistically look at skills that you truly can translate from one area to another in a compelling way, that if a candidate from that other area is also your competitor, you have no shortcomings, I think you'd be surprised. And I think people would be delighted at, you know, the opportunities and the possibilities that could arise from that.
Yeah. Well, yeah,
Really long answer.
I don't know. I think people do carry around those burdens of, I should have landed that position, or I should have more experience. I'm going to go get a PMP because that'll help. But, you know, sometimes it's based off of what, like, it's just a feeling of like, some type of deficit, but you're saying take some of that burden off of yourself.
Some of it, I mean, you're right. It might be some deficits. And if you're so aware of it and so sure that it would help the situation, I don't advise against it. Oftentimes getting a certificate is also like maybe a personal goal of someone, which I think is really great. But more importantly, there were a couple of times in my career personally that I didn't get a job that I really wanted. And I specifically, like, my eyes were glued to that role until I saw who they hired for it, because I was so curious to see what did they have, and it made perfect sense. So I think, yes, you know, if you have the relationship or that open conversation after you know that you didn't get it, ask them, you know, what was it that drove you to this decision so that I can improve on it, not necessarily as a way of, well, what did I not have? You know, because you kind of feel like there was a breakup. And I think that's always been really great when people do ask for it, is what can I work on, or what was, you know, the driving factors in your decision. Look, if there are deficits, I hope that people are aware and, you know, able to work on it. But oftentimes sometimes it's just chemistry. Sometimes it's, you know, one tiny thing that, you know, wasn't as much of a concern with someone else. Sometimes it's, you know, so many different factors are involved that shouldn't be taken so personally. But we've all been in those shoes. So I totally understand.
Yeah. Well, and I think I haven't been on your side as much, but I think it looks different from when you see a candidate that's creating their own momentum and making use of the time they have, and maybe it's pursuing, maybe it's a certification, maybe it's the interest that you talked about, but they're busy and productive versus, and I'm not knocking anybody, because can be very discouraging, but just those that are going through the churn of applying, and that's really what their
So
day
true.
looks like. Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So true. Like, just staying active and out there. I think a lot of people also hide and feel that the perfect opportunity will find them. And that's generally not how it works. So continuing to talk to your network, continuing to put yourself out there, reaching out to just have a conversation, have a meeting, not necessarily pushing a resume. I think those
Yeah.
are all ways for people to kind of stay in the game.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, that's consistent with what I tell people is just go to that networking event and get the certification and grab coffee. And,
Yeah.
one of those things may not be the direct, but it's going to, I always say it leads to something. It may not be exactly where you, where you
Yeah.
expected, but it will create this kind of momentum effect around yourself.
For sure. And I think for the creative community, especially because at the end of the day, you're creators. And I think there's always events and inspirations happening in the world that allows you to um, show the world your form of thinking, your creativity. It doesn't have to be a client brief. It doesn't have to be, you know, a definitive project. And when I come across those types of things, like sometimes on LinkedIn, other times on other, social media, I love it. And I do, keep track of some of the folks that I feel like, wow, that was really cool. That had nothing to do with work. That had nothing to do with, a brief, an award, a challenge, a business pitch. It was truly like a really creative way of seeing something that made an impression, and I love that.
Mhm. All right. So last thought, if we did this again next year, again, no crystal ball, but what do you think the conversation would be like as opposed to where we are right now?
Ooh, I don't think I've thought of that.
Mhm.
That's a great question. Um, I think there will be, at least from what I'm seeing, I think there will be probably a little more of those acquisition of highly um, tech, maybe even AI focused entities by some of the bigger agencies. I feel like it definitely becomes um, a kind of like a niche or even a competency that they can't quite master as quickly as an acquisition would allow them to. So I'd be interested to see what that integration looks like. So maybe that definitely affects some of the hiring and what they're looking at. So I think that would be part of the conversation. I hope that we also would be talking about the bounce back and what 2024 felt like, coming out of the great resignation and hiring and all the jazz of, 2021 and 2022, and then the dip of 2023. I think 24 is going to be really interesting. We're also heading into obviously presidential elections and just the big year macro level for the country. And so, yeah, I'd like to think that it, in a smart way, it can shape the next couple of years, because I feel like with AI, we can't really go beyond the next year or two. I was reading this article a few weeks ago that talked about college applications and how similar to what you said of, are we scared? I think a lot of incoming college students are feeling that because they don't know how many of these majors will actually be eliminated as a result of AI taking over.
True.
So it's that next level stress on, am I choosing the right path? Am I choosing the right, um, kind of areas to focus on? And the truth is, no one knows. I don't know, you don't know, they don't know. But what I do know is that critical thinking, creative thinking, being able to make good connections and meaningful connections between humans, that will not go away. So whatever major that is, good for them. Whatever title or department the agencies want to create, good for them. As long as we're able to kind of see the goal at the end, how we get there is going to be a little bit different, but I certainly hope that 2024 would be a bounce back year.
Yeah, let's hope so.
I hope so.
Thank you, Mandana. This is great.
This has been so fun. I really appreciate this opportunity and I very much enjoyed it. Thank you for you know, giving me the chance, Aaron.
Yeah, thank you. It was really nice talking with you.
Likewise.